Mirë se keni ardhur. Ky është një takim shumë special për shumë dritë. Shumë special për mua sepse Art House ka lind me idenë që me ftu miq në shtëpi. Edhe kuratorët dhe artistat që ne ftojmë zakonisht kanë lidhje miqësore me ne. Po, sot kemi dy miq me vërtet veçantë. Është Joa Ljungberg dhe Ursula Meier. Janë dy miq vjetër fëmijë. Me Joan njem diku nga vitet 2000 në para të ekspozitat e para ku unë si artist merrja pjesë. Mos gabojmë, ishte Bienalja e Manifestës në Ljubljana. E pastaj kemi takuar shumë shpejt në 2021 në Suedi. Dhe pastaj herë tjerë në Tiranë. Kam qenë mysafir në shtëpinë e saj në Borë, në Malë, në Det e tjerë. Jo është kuratore në Moderna Muze në Malmo. Ka qenë kuratore edhe në Moderna Muze, që është muzeu kryesor i Suedisë, edhe në Stockholm. Vjen këtu bashkë me Edi Muken, i cili është një mik edhe më i vjetër, me cilin nga vitet e shkollës në Tiranë, si student, si koleg, si artist, por në vitet 90 Edi mori një drejtim tjetër, si të u shput pak nga e grupi i krijuesve të themi, edhe solli për herë të parë në Shqipëri figurën e kuratorit, që ishte një figurë e panjohur për skenën e artit shqiptar. Dhe mendoj se Edi ka pas një kontribut të jashtëzakonshëm në lancimin e artistëve shqiptarë në botën e artit, në krijimin e skenës të artit shqiptar, të artit bashkëkor shqiptar, nëpërmjet unufrit të parë unufrit parë në kombëtar, në 98-ën, e pastaj me Bienalen e Tiranës, me TIK-ën, Institutin e Artit Kontemporan të Tiranës, dhe njëkohësisht me promovimin si të artit shqiptar në skenën e kombëtar, po ashtu dhe me prezantimin e artistëve në kombëtar në skenën e artit shqiptar. Ai sot është kurator në Stockholm, ka qenë më përpara në Rodasten në Göteborg. So, I was saying two words in Albanian that you already know, but I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you.
And I'm very curious to listen to your presentation, also because you're talking about an exhibition that somehow I was part, but I haven't seen that, so I'm curious to also myself, but I'm sure that it will be very special also for our friends that are here. So,
Thank you. So, hello everybody. I hope you can hear me. And thank you, Adrian, for inviting us here to this amazing house. It's so beautiful, and yeah, I was really impressed coming here to the art house, and yeah, it's also so great that it can function as a meeting point like this, and yeah, it feels special to be here. Thank you. I have, during the last 2 years, worked mainly with an exhibition project that I call The New Human, and that is through art looking at our human life conditions in a world that is changing very fast in many different ways. And I would like to tell you a little bit about this project, because it's something that I have it has been really interesting to work with, and it has felt very important, and it has also opened new doors to me in different directions. The New Human is an exhibition project that wants to ask questions or evoke questions such as, how do we perceive and understand ourselves as humans? How do we live? How do we socialize, organize, and control each other? And what kind of future might await us? The New Human is an extensive video and film-based exhibition, and it's presented in several chapters with different focuses. The first chapter, the one in which you, Adrian, was also a part, had a subtitle, You and I in Global Wonderland. And it dealt with how we evaluate, exploit, care for, and also fear each other in a world characterized by intensified globalization and migration. And the second chapter, which had the subtitle Knock Knock, Is Anyone Home?, had instead more of a focus on the rapid technological developments and how it is changing and reshaping our very existence as human beings. But I will start to tell you a bit more about the first chapter. You and I in Global Wonderland opened at Moderna Museet in Malmö, which is in the south of Sweden, on the 14th of March 2015. And I thought that I would like to read you the opening speech I gave during that particular night that we opened the exhibition in Malmö, because I think it says something of the troubled times that we were going through back then, and that I think has perhaps become even more troublesome today. Not the least with Brussels fresh in mind. So I will read you what I said to the visitors that night. Tonight, when we are opening the exhibition You and I in Global Wonderland, it has been a little over a month since the Swedish media published a video of a security guard at Malmö Central Station sitting on a 9-year-old boy, covering his mouth and banging his head into the stone floor. It later turned out that the boy was an unaccompanied child refugee who had escaped from a group home in order to search for his older brother. A couple of months earlier, around New Year's Day, there were several reports of attacks on mosques all around Sweden. And less than a month ago, 2 people were killed in a terrorist attack in Copenhagen. And since that day, the artist Lars Vilks, who some of you might know as an artist who depicted the Prophet Muhammad, he has been relocated to a secret location, and many Jews in Malmö and elsewhere, in Sweden at least, feel afraid to leave their children at daycare or at school. And these examples are just a few of a great many incidents that together paint a picture of a society in which hatred and fear has taken hold. And at a time like this, it feels important to present an exhibition like You and I in Global Wonderland that invites us to reflect on how we see each other, treat our neighbors, and live together in a changing world. All of the works shown in the exhibition have been produced since the year 2000, the turn of the millennium, and up to today. It's a period that has been profoundly influenced by the terrorist attack on September 11, 2001, and by the war on terror that followed. It is also time that has witnessed how many of the dreams that flourished amid the Arab Spring has collapsed into war and humanitarian degeneration. Extremist violence is on the rise, particularly in poor countries. Nationalist and neo-fascist movements and political parties have become firmly established throughout Europe, and in the West there is also a growing fear of what is perceived to be an increasingly menacing Russia. And simultaneously to these developments, we see the largest number of refugees since the Second World War. I have no illusion, or we have no illusion, that our exhibition, You and I in Global Wonderland, will resolve any of these global problems, but we do believe that art has the ability to broaden our perspective, to get us to reflect on the foundations of our values and our behavior, and to move us emotionally in a way that everyday life doesn't always allow. And furthermore, we believe that by engaging the imagination, art can evoke new thoughts and make us recognize new possibilities, and maybe some of these thoughts and possibilities can in some small way contribute to a better world tomorrow. So I will show you some slides and also some video material from this first chapter of the exhibition The New Human. And the slide you see here is a work by a young artist called Santiago Mostin. Some of you might have seen his work because it was briefly shown in Tirana in a video art festival. It's called Delay, and the artist is the man sitting closest to you. And he, in the film, is moving through the posher part of Stockholm during a Friday evening, and he is approaching strangers, all of them being white, fairly young men dressed for a night out, and he is somehow approaching them in a way that is unexpected, intimate, and he sort of. I think we should look at the film, and the volume should be fairly. It has not started yet.
No, it's fine.
It's about 5 minutes long, so I think we can see it. Another artist that was presented in this first chapter of the exhibition was Thomas Rafa, who is an artist from Slovakia, and he sees his role as a mixture between artist, journalist and activist. And since the year 2009 he has built up an extensive video archive that he calls New Nationalisms in the Heart of Europe. And it's a growing archive. He continues to do video reports that shows the growth of nationalism and also neo-fascism in Europe. He has also, since the year 2015, followed and documented Europe's handling of the refugee crisis, and he has really been at the border zones where people has tried to get through the fences into Europe. And somehow as a counter reaction perhaps to this to the brutality that these video reports often show, he also works with a kind of activist projects, and many of his activist projects has been with the Roma population in his home country, and also many of the videos from this New Nationalism archive show the Roma population's very precarious situation in many Central European countries where they are victims of extreme racism and segregation. One of these activist projects Thomas Rafa calls Walls of Sports, and he has, together with people living in the Roma settlements and other volunteers, he has made huge murals on the long and high-raising concrete walls that has been erected in many Slovakian cities in order to separate the Roma population from the rest of the inhabitants. And the reasons for painting on these walls has been to make them more visible for the outside world, like that this crazy thing is happening, but also to make them less brutal for the people to live with that has to live very close by. He has also made painting workshops for Roma kids. In this one, they made together a huge canvas, and the theme was to think about, freely associate around the concept of home. And then they hang this huge canvas on the facade of the building block where they live. But as a Swede, in Sweden during the last years there has come, it's like a new phenomenon. A few years ago it was very rare to see a person asking for money on the streets. The only time you saw it was maybe a drug addict or but it was very uncommon. Now, today, and since some years back, there is people asking for money in every corner, outside every shop, and it's mainly people coming from Central Europe and mainly Roma people coming in order to try to collect money in order to bring back to their families. And I must say that it was only until when I saw Thomas Rafa's video reports that I understood how extremely precarious their situation is. So I would like to share with you one of these videos. It's like 6 minutes long. So
Já jsem neviděla, aby nějaký Romové šli obchodovat proti majoritě a ohrožovali jejich. Pro nás, naše dětství, je tak nebezpečné. tím, že budou vykřikovat prostě nějaký hesla proti tím. Nechci to takhle křičet, jako křičej oni. My na to nejsme. Každý jednotlivě zodpovědný za to, co udělá. A od toho je tady zákon, aby to řešil. Prosím, uděláš něco, samozřejmě, platí pro tebe zákon, tak ať si udělají pořádek, ať vás to čili, doba se nám je to jedno. Prostě každý, ať si to ocení, když se neumí chovat, ale ne všichni, aby jsme trpěli za někoho, kdo někde něco spáchal. Majoritní společnost taky netrpí za svoje kriminálníky. Proč to takhle dělají? Taková nespravedlnost. Jako já mám tady děti, taky se mám bát o svoje děti, že budou venku a budu se bát, že je někdo napadne.
Ještě před chvíli! Skoro tady nikdo nebyl! A dneska vidíte, že za 2 minuty se tady hned shromáždí plno lidí! Dívejte se nahoru! Hrandy jsou zalezeny! Jak se to dělalo ve středověku? Defenestrací! Defenestrace!
České republiky. Jménem zákona vás vyzýváme, abyste uposlechli pokynu policie, nebo proti vám bude použité dalších prostředků.
Pan tak odklašuješ frontu, akorát byl nervózní druhý. Když vás se říká, museli být nezaměstné. Budeme demokratický prezident. Teraz víc! Nebojme se, zaprosíme! A do nich podporujte tady! My jsme tady doma! My jsme tady doma! My jsme tady doma! Češi Čechů! Češi Čechů! Češi Čechů!
this is another piece in the exhibition by Isaac Julian. It's called Paradise Omeros. Maybe we can put the light on a little bit again if we want. It's a work that explores feelings of not belonging and the special and perhaps hybrid states of mind that can arise in a person that lives in and in between several cultures. And throughout this work we also see images of water, and we are transported with the water between London and the Caribbean island St. Lucia, and also between the 1960s and our own contemporary time. And this 3-channel video installation is named after the epic poem Omeros by the St. Lucian author Derek Walcott. And the main character in this poem is called Achille, and he reappears in Isaac Julian's film Paradise Omeros as, I believe, the artist's alter ego. And in some sequences of the film we get to see what I believe is the artist's parents as they try hard to assimilate into the British society in the 1960s as newly arrived immigrants from the Caribbean islands. And it also is a film that somehow shares with us the main character's threefold sense of alienation as a black person, as immigrant, and as gay. And this is a work by a Chinese artist, Cao Fei. It's filmed inside a factory where they produce lamps. And it's called Whose Utopia, and it's an installation including both objects and video that reflects on the great transformations and human migrations that has characterized Chinese society since the rapid integration into the global economy. And the work was produced in one of the Osram light bulb factories in China's Pearl River Delta. And it's an area that has been shaped very much by a huge number of multinational corporations establishing there, and also a huge number of young work immigrants from mainland China. So somehow the new companies and these people moving in there has created something together where sort of dreams and prospects of the future mixes with disappointments and homesickness. And inside this installation there is one projection where we see workers in their factory environment that suddenly starts to, they somehow take a break from the monotonous routines of their work, and they start to improvise a dance inside the factory and to the rhythm of the production chain. This is a work by a Malmö-based artist from Romania. Her name is Ioana Coiucariu, and this video shows 3 sets of instructions, physical instructions. We see the artist herself in all 3 sets, where she gets instructions from different people. In this first sequence, she gets instructions from a woman that is asking for money on the street in how she should lie in a submissive position, but at the same time try to protect her knees and try not to be too cold. In another sequence, she gets instruction from a police officer in how she can use her body to bring another body to the ground and take control of another person. And in a third sequence, I don't have an image, but in the third sequence we see her getting instruction from a yoga teacher who teaches her how to get into the child position, which is a position within yoga, which is supposed to be very relaxing and good for your heart and your nervous system. So it's somehow about how different body postures can have so very different meanings in different contexts and depending on who does them. And this is a work by a Turkish artist called Ferhat Özgür, and he has filmed his mother and I think it is the aunt or the neighbor. Anyhow, it's two little women that have known each other their whole life and they are very close friends, but they have also lived very different lives. One of them has lived more a traditional life and she has also dressed accordingly. What do I do? And she has always used a headscarf and never used makeup. And the other one, and she has been a housewife. And the other one has worked as a teacher and dressed more modern. And they sit in the living room. They have tea and they talk about their different kinds of lives. And then they decide let's swap clothes with each other. And it's like they forget there is a camera there, and they start to swap clothes with each other, and they laugh, and then it's also interesting as a viewer because somehow, even though this is only a few minutes long, the preconceptions that at least I had when I looked at one woman moves with the clothes to the other woman. So it somehow makes it very clear to you how much the surface, how strong an impact it has on how we read another person and what preconceptions we have of another person. And this is a work, 4-channel video installation by an American artist called Robert Boyd, and it's called Xanadu. It's from 2006, and in this work, the artist fuses an euphoric disco atmosphere with a terrifying insight into man's collective brutality. The title refers to the summer city Xanadu that was founded in the 14th century by the Mongolian Emperor Kublai Khan. And the installation is built out of hundreds of hours of archival film, which is presented to us as an apocalyptic flood of images, confronting us with the global phenomenon of doomsday cult, religious fanaticism, and political extremism. And the overwhelming and deeply disturbing material is presented in a format similar to music videos and are screened in a space that is similar to a dance club. And all the time there is this 70s pop song Xanadu playing in the background, and rotating above our head is a glittering disco ball. And taken together, the sampled fragments form a kind of chronicle of the years between the Second World War and the war in Iraq around 2003-2004. And the work also culminates in a sequence in which President George W. Bush addresses the American people following the September 11 attack in 2001, and in which he declares the end of a feel-good era and the beginning of a new time. And this is a piece by Yael Bartana. It's called Infernal. It's an example of her methodology where she mixes facts and fiction and prophecy and history, and it presents in a Hollywood film blockbuster format. It shows to us the erection of the third temple of Solomon, but this time in São Paulo in Brazil. And even though the film is only 20 minutes long, we also get to see how this temple is violently destroyed and how from the debris there is constructed a site of worship and cultural tourism. And this is an artist by some really amazing artist, so amazing I forgot the name. No. Adrian Pazzi, the column, I will not talk about it because I assume you know about it. And this is a work by a Turkish artist again, Ezra Arason, She made this work in Sweden, and she met a class with immigrants learning Swedish, and she asked them to think of what would you really want to say if you could speak Swedish. And then they wrote this down in their own mother tongue, and this text was then translated by their Swedish teacher. And then we meet them when they try to, in very broken Swedish, read in Swedish what they really would like to say if they could speak Swedish. And it's somehow a work about language barriers and how difficult it is to sort of get through before you have the language, and if you're a newcomer to a new place. This is some images, the last images I have from this chapter. It shows again Thomas Rafa, who has followed the refugee crisis and especially Europe's handling of the refugee crisis. So, the first chapter of The New Human, You and I in Global Wonderland, dealt with how we live together and treat each other in a world characterized by intensified globalization and migration and many other things. In the project's second chapter, Knock Knock, Is Anyone Home?, which is right now shown in Moderna Museet in Malmö and until 4th of September. In this chapter we encounter a very different type of human, or at least human-looking characters. Some of them appear even to have mutated with information technology, hyper-consumption and global corporate culture into something beyond human. And this is exemplified by this work by Ryan Tricartin, which he calls Trilogy Comp, which is a 3-channel video installation. And the characters in this video installation, their patterns of movements is characterized by some kind of narcissistic posing, as if there is a camera in front of them all the time. And they speak some kind of weird language, which is saturated with SMS text shortenings and some kind of internet jargon. For instance, here in one of the videos, we get sucked into this super intense film about a Korean multinational company where all the employers wear blonde wigs, and all of them have names that refer to their bilateral trade relations. So someone is called British Korea, someone is called another Greek Korea, a third one is called something else. And of course the director is called Global Korea. And in another part of this video installation, another film is called Sibling Topics, which begins with this woman who is pregnant, but pregnant beyond the biological reality. She is 11 months pregnant, and she is recording a video message to her unborn quadruples 27 years before they will see it. So we see this woman doing yoga, and her stomach is moving in all different directions, and she records this video message. And then the rest of the film, it takes more a format of a reality TV program, where we get to follow these 4 sisters that is her daughters, and that are all named after all different computer programs. And we get to follow them when they react on the message from their mother. They are all 27-year-old. And yeah, it's pretty twisted. And it's some kind of dystopic, I believe, visualization of a not so far away future, or not. And here in Mikael Rothenberg's installation called Tropical Breeze, we get to witness a quite bizarre chain of production where goods are being produced with this woman's super or superhuman flexibility, and where the end products get their sort of desired and also marketed citrus freshness from her fellow workmates' body sweat. And in this way it's like a twisted visualization of the concept of sweatshop. And at the same time, in another part of the exhibition, we are offered to experience a financial crisis under hypnosis in the work of Superflex. And we get to experience this financial crisis both in the role of a billionaire, but also as someone extremely poor. And towards the end of this hypnotic session, we are also offered a possibility to completely free ourselves from the capitalist system. Knock Knock, Is Anyone Home? I should say the subtitle of this chapter addresses the presence of human life, as if knock knock, is anyone home? It's an exhibition that wants to encourage us to ask ourselves what it means to be human in a time when the line between man and machine is fading. Again, how do we live and interact? How do we socialize? How do we love? How do we exploit, organize, and control each other? And what kind of future awaits us? Several of the works in this chapter seems to point towards a shift, perhaps a regression in human evolution, or a transformation into something new. New technologies today have the capacity to infiltrate our bodies and turn us into cyborgs, thus dissolving the categories that we have used to divide the world into opposites, like living and non-living, natural, artificial, technique, biology. The digital revolution has fundamentally changed the way we relate to the world and to each other, and there is no longer a clear dividing line between actual reality and virtual reality. We communicate and socialize more and more through computers and screens, and the enemy in modern warfare is increasingly transformed into an animated figure in computer games. And how does this affect our empathic capabilities and our feelings for each other as human beings? As an exhibition, Knock Knock, Is Anyone Home? Oscillates between the hysterically absurd and the deeply serious. And as humans, we seem to be skirting the borderline between final disaster and the formation of something new. And the question that seems to be lurking in the background is whether it's even going to be feasible to be human in the long run, or if we, consciously or unconsciously, will be developing into something new, perhaps a new character or a new being that is better suited to life in the high-tech and high-speed world that is our own creation. And this is a work by the artist Ed Atkins, who is very interested in how new techniques and how the digital revolution has really changed the way we socialize with each other, and also how set formats and functions in social media really shape the way we think, the way we talk to each other, the choices we make. In this particular film, Even Pricks, we both meet a talking chimpanzee, but the other character, if you can call a physical limb a character, is this thumb that makes thumbs up, which is a symbol that has really come to dominate everyday life for millions and millions of people active on social media as the symbol for liking something, but which is also a symbol with long and many historical links. I think, for instance, in the gladiator games in Roman times, it was the symbol used for the masses to decide if the gladiator should live or die. Or maybe that's a myth, I'm not sure.
It was only for dying.
For dying. But dying was like this, no?
You could do die or you could do live.
No, but I think die was this.
No.
It was-
No, die
this
was
die
like
and
that.
this was live.
Okay.
I didn't know it was correct.
Anyhow, in this video, the manuscript is presented mainly through advertising slogans, through text that seems to be like inserted in video game environments, and it's like it has been described as a preview of itself. It's like an endless flow of spectacular promises of things that never come, that are just sort of succeeded by new promises all the time. And this is another work by Ed Atkins, where a computer-generated avatar is sitting at the bottom of the ocean, trying desperately to get in contact with some genuine experience of lived life. And this is another work by Helen Martin. And I could actually... maybe, how much time do we have? I thought I could show you just a short sample from this film.
Better nature.
I will just...
Millions of small or big tricks for stopping awful nature pouncing on us and bumping us off too quickly.
The client lives in a smallish studio apartment in the city. It is typical of all older buildings situated in and around that area of town. The floor slopes slightly to one side and metal bars cover the windows. The door to the apartment enters through the back section, containing a...
Storms will slip down the roof into wide subterranean passages, finish looking rivers.
Sorry, I had planned to show you a particular clip, but you will get an idea. I will just
that are also seen reflected in the mirror.
Say shortly that this is a film. There is this flow of super artificial imagery, almost as the virtual reality has swallowed the real reality, or the reality that we usually call the real reality. And we move through different kind of stage sets, and we encounter computer animated objects and organisms. And the film is also built up as a conversation between 6 narrators that speak rather not really to each other, but passes each other in their speech. But they talk about everything from fashion and interior design, but they also talk about human beings in relationship to nature and the fact that we have estranged ourselves from our natural living environment.
Peas in January, courgettes in February, small asparagus tender from tip to toe. In November, there are books and buildings I can ransack and copy everything whenever I like and consider myself an intellectual. At home, it's warm or cool. There's amazingly fast internet, and crowds of people in the street, all alive and contented, feeling each other up. Some attempt to robbery. The bars sell coffee and brioche. Every now and then, there's a telephone in the street with someone trying to do business, someone else trying to organise a pub. What's happening in nature?
I have perpetrated malicious caricatures myself, but I regard them as my failures. There was, for instance, a pompous old city father in a small town who had a long beard trimmed square like a doormat. He consented to give me a sitting, but I felt sure he did not understand what he was in for, because when it was all over, and at his request, I was showing him my disconnected notes. He flew into a towering rage and threw them into the fire. I was so annoyed that when I drew him from memory, I made his beard more like a doormat and printed on it, "Wipe your feet." That was an ill-judged and ill-tempered touch. But we're all human.
This is a work by Harun Farocki, It's called Immersion. It's part of a larger body of works called Serious Games, in which he's looking at how computer-based games, war games, first was developed within the military, then later became like a hobby, but that how it's still used within the military, both for recruiting purposes, for training purposes, and now recently also for therapeutical purposes. Because, and this particular work looks at the phenomena of PlayStation, I think it's called Virtual Iraq, which was developed in order to treat homecoming soldiers that was traumatized from war. And by simulating the traumatic situations that they had lived through in the war in this kind of computer game environment, the idea was that the therapist should guide the soldiers through this simulation of their memories in order to try to overcome them. But of course the work is also ironic that this kind of computer-based war games are both the way in and out of war, and he also makes a point of the fact that he found out that the animations or the programs that was developed for the training purposes had much more budget and was much more developed, whereas the ones that was developed for therapeutical purposes were much more low budget, and with the consequence that there were no shadows, for instance. This is one of two works that is filmed within a laboratory environment. This is Daria Martin. It's called Soft Materials. It's a 16mm film that was filmed in a laboratory at the university in Zurich, where they research on embodied artificial intelligence. And in this particular film, we see two professional dancers, two naked human beings, dancers, that are interacting with intelligent robots. Robots that are not programmed with beforehand with a computer brain, but that are constructed to learn from their own physical experiences. And because of this, they somehow interact with the environment and in a way that is quite similar to small children and also to children of animals. I will show this film in the end, but I will maybe show you some more slides first. This is another work that is filmed in a laboratory, and it's a completely new piece that had its premiere in the exhibition. It's called 0 Point Energy, and it's filmed in a nanotechnological laboratory, which is also called Clean Room. It's a particular kind of laboratory made for nano research. It's a super controlled environment because when you research on this extremely small scale, like it's an atomic scale, you have to be very careful not to for dust particles or for different particles to move around. So you have to move in a certain way, and you have to dress in a certain way, and the whole environment is constructed in a certain way. And the artist, Kerstin Hamilton is her name, has collaborated with a researcher within nanotechnology to do this piece where the researchers also becomes dancers, and some kind of weird choreography is taking place in this laboratory. But why she's interested in nanotechnology is because it's an area which can have huge impacts on our future lives, and where also on this, she explains to me, on this scale in which nano researchers are doing their work, it's on such a small scale, on atomic scale, and there the sort of boundary between technology and biology ceases to exist. And the new sort of breakthroughs that is done within this field is really actualizing the question of what does it really mean to be human. Another new work that is still under production, so I haven't seen it, but it's a new piece by an artist called Ursula Meier, and it's recorded right now, and it will be shown in the project from August. And she calls this piece Atom Spirit. And in Ursula Meier's recent films, this one included, I believe, language and categories such as gender and nature are in the process of dissolving. Different materials seems to be coming together to form new compounds, and we get the feeling that man as a species is on the verge of either disappearing or taking on a new form. Her latest film, Atom Spirit, explores the relationship between advanced technology and nature in the post-human age. That is, in the area that some people say will follow the anthropocentric time that we are currently living through, and that is normally defined as a time where human actions have fundamentally had a fundamental impact on ecosystems around the globe. This film will be set in the West Indies, in a landscape that evokes the Garden of Eden, and in which visitors uninhibitedly indulge in their desires. And this venue for pleasure, where insatiable human consumption is fed, simultaneously serves as a setting for extinction. And the film protagonist is a biology researcher, and she's working with a genome project with the ambition to gather and cryogenetically freeze DNA from all forms of life. She also works on the side as an actor in a motion capture studio in which they work to animate different kinds of animals that are threatened by extinction. And when this biological researcher discovers that she descends from an ancient Caribbean civilization that was wiped out by the British colonizers, she starts to fantasize about a suborgian future that exists in parallel with the consciousness of this ancestral civilization. And she starts to think of a situation in which her ancestors, in which their understanding of nature and of the world can somehow come together with the digital and technological breakthroughs of our own time, or of her time. And Atom Spirits is a film in which boundaries are blurred and erased on practically every level, between the living and non-living, between organisms and different environments, and between viewer and actor. And as she imagined it, we seem as humans in this film to exist in a transitory beings in infinite ecosystems, as some kind of flow of anima. And before I show you the film of Daria Martin, I just give you some samples of how it looks at Moderna Museet Malmö right now in the big turbine hall, which is our main exhibition space. And to round up, in this spring, in May, these two chapters will somehow come together as one exhibition at Moderna Museet in Stockholm. And then we will also show some further works. Here's some.
Do you have the title already?
No, it will be called The New Human.
Okay.
It will not be. It will not be. It will be an exhibition in which the thematics of the two chapters come together.
But the selected work from both chapters?
Yes, not all of them. Maybe we can stop here. Thank you.